Today we're going to be looking at a scenario where the Ottoman Empire from real life comes into the WICSO world. Now obviously you may be looking at this map being like, that's not what the Ottoman Empire looked like. And to that I say, yeah, you're definitely correct. I found this image, there were like 17 different variations. I picked this one because I thought it would be an interesting scenario, and obviously I just sketched the borders, like none of this is accurate. So, you feel free to complain about that. But roughly, the Ottoman Empire, existed around the Middle East, the Balkans, and then North Africa. So that's what I've tried to replicate here. But yeah, this scenario is going to be actually pretty interesting because the Ottoman Empire coming into the world is actually quite a big country. And in terms of like the WICSO world, they control a lot of old empire territory, like all around here. They even control the capital of the old empire. I haven't actually updated the capitals. Ooh, did they actually control the capital of the red team? That's kind of interesting. You know what? Just for the red team's benefit, I will actually give the capital kind of over to them. But yeah, if we look at the capitals layer, a lot of these capitals need, I guess, kind of removing or switching. So I guess I can go ahead and do that real quick. Guys, Egypt doesn't have a city. I'll just make up a random city in the Sahara for their capital. Now, obviously, for this series to work, I will just go ahead and speak while I'm finishing this map up. Things like the AN and alliances are turned off. For those who don't know, the AN is like an international body in the WICSO world, which kind of would stop things from this happening. And also, it doesn't make any sense anyway, because how can the country just appear? But that is kind of common sense for these type of scenarios. Yeah, what is the Ottoman Empire going to be doing first? Well, they're going to be finishing off a few small powers around them. Up over here, we see them launch an invasion into this Croatian country, which goes pretty well and easy. Also, what's ever left of this country. And they also launch an invasion into the Farmers Union. And we see that they will quickly go ahead and annex these lands, now making their borders look actually quite decent in Europe. I kind of like it, actually. We see that Russia will actually be getting on the prowl next. I feel like all my videos somehow end up with Russia doing stuff. But anyway, Russia is going to see this Caucasus country being weak and going to be like, I'm stealing that before the Ottomans can. And the Ottomans are going to be like, what the hell, Russia? That was my next target. And Russia's going to be like, screw you. And honestly, if we were talking about power rankings, the Ottoman Empire might actually be the strongest country in the world. Like, look how big they are. Like, I know they don't have too much. I mean, to be fair, in terms of WICSO, do they have too much good land? They do kind of have some of the core old empire land. I don't know. I think they'd definitely be a top 3 power. Maybe India would be stronger, but I do think the Ottoman Empire would probably be second place in terms of power. Definitely above America and China, who, by the way, off topic, but I think America and China should not be as strong as they are. They just fought a huge war and they're basically still like top 5 powers. Bit weird. Anyway, who are the Ottoman Empire's next target going to be? Well, it's going to be finishing off some of these old empire countries, mainly the red team. As unfortunately for the red team, they have lost a lot of their core land, and the Ottoman Empire knows how valuable this land is. So, yeah, they want to secure it. As you see, they quickly managed to secure the capital of the red team. And, yeah, the red team is split in two. This region will quickly fall. And unfortunately for the red team, they are no match for the Ottomans, especially without all their land, and they will quickly be overrun. And we see that the Ottoman Empire will go ahead and fully annex these countries. And a lot of countries around the Ottoman Empire will actually do something pretty interesting. And that is actually that we see the purple team, as well as these two countries down here, will actually go ahead and join the Arabian country. And you might be like, hold on, is this just the old empire? Like, what the hell, this is not allowed. Well, first of all, AIM doesn't exist anyway. And second of all, this really isn't the old empire. Everyone can see this and are like, it's whatever. It's just the blue team uniting with some countries to protect them from being eaten up by the Ottomans. So it's not that big of a deal. But now, what do the Ottomans do? Because, there's not really any weak countries left to finish up. And what are they going to do? Well, they're going to intervene in the Libyan civil war, as they're like, I'm stealing this now. And we quickly see that Ottoman troops pour into Libya. Now, they ain't changed for the Sahara, but, it's just Libya, bro. Nobody cares. And everyone's like, what the hell? Intervening in the civil war? That's not allowed. But then he's like, well, the AN doesn't exist, so I can do whatever I want. And then we see the Ottoman Empire will actually be seen as kind of heroes, beating up the terrorists, wiping them out. And they will also wipe out these terrorists, until eventually all of Libya and the terrorists will actually come under control from the Ottomans. And actually the Ottomans will just fully annex this territory, now creating a really ugly border with Egypt, in which they will soon fix, as the Ottoman Empire also finishes up Egypt. Now obviously when the Ottoman Empire existed, there wasn't a point going into the Sahara, but the Sahara is now explored and discovered now, so maybe they would want to go ahead and do this. But tensions are definitely rising over here as West Africa kind of fears the Ottoman Empire and is like, hey, we need to stop this expansionist kind of thing. And you can clearly see that West Africa will actually go ahead and form a military alliance, and that will actually be with Arabia over here and this pink country, as these countries kind of fear the Ottoman expansion and, don't want to get invaded. We see the Ottoman Empire is going to go on the attack again. That's all these videos are about, them attacking. And I actually think they'll push further into Europe. They're like, you know what, might as well just go further into Europe and kind of scare everyone. And they will easily wipe out this country over here. And yeah, boom, you're gone. But this will now actually make a lot of European countries mad, especially Germany, who's like, what the hell are you doing? And we actually see that Germany will enter in the Circle Alliance, being like, no way, Ottoman Empire, what the hell are you doing? And the Ottoman Empire will, you know, respond back to this by invading another country. And then there's actually going to be Persia. Now, this is their first somewhat strong country. But I mean, this is the whole Ottoman Empire. Like, they're really not really a match if you look how big this thing is. So Ottoman Empire troops will push into Persia. This will maybe take like a year or like half a year. But eventually, they will manage to reach over to the capital over here and take it. And after maybe a few more months of probably like guerrilla fighting, if I'm being honest, we see that all of Persia will go ahead and fall over to the Ottomans. And we see that the Ottomans don't actually fully annex the state. They create a little puppet state down here because they didn't want to annex the whole of Persia because that's a big annexation. But yeah, the Ottoman Empire is expanding very nicely. And now, what do the Ottomans do now? Like, they can't really do anything. And the Ottomans kind of look at this scenario and realise that they have some pretty powerful foes on their board and that they all united. Then, you know, we're screwed, because if West Africa, Germany, Russia, Arabia, this pink team, and especially India, if India joins, then it's like, oh, Ottoman Empire is probably the strongest country now, but not, like, India's probably not too far behind. So the Ottoman Empire decides that it has to attack first, and what is it going to actually attack? Well, it's actually going to be attacking the square team, and more specifically Russia, as millions of Ottoman troops will go ahead and gear up on the border here. Now, Russia does notice this, but by the time they notice, it's too late, as about like 1 million, maybe even 2 million Ottoman troops pour into Russia en masse, one of the biggest like invasions in WICSO history, and they will do incredibly well, as Russia probably only has 500,000 troops. And yeah, we see that the Ottoman Empire is doing incredibly well, and they are almost near the Russian capital. However, Russia launches a decisive counterattack, pushing them away. But nonetheless, the Ottoman Empire still overwhelms Russia, and they even go ahead and successfully wipe out their little like alliance member over here. And to make things worse, we see that the Ottoman Empire will go ahead and form its own alliance, and that alliance will actually include the pink team over here, which goes ahead and joins the war against Russia. Now, they aren't too useful, but with Russia distracted, they do actually manage to push quite far into Russian territory, pushing over to something like that. And we actually see that another country will be joining the Star Alliance, which will be Poland, which is pretty interesting to see, as would they really help the Ottoman Empire? They're mainly doing this to combat Russia, but they kind of think the Ottoman Empire could protect them from maybe even like Germany, although Germany's quite peaceful in this scenario, unlike my other video where Germany went on a rampage. But nonetheless, Poland joining this does create even more problems for Russia, who now has to fight another front over here, in which the Ottoman Empire will use this as an advantage to sneak in a bunch of troops up here. And yeah, it's not looking good for Russia. Now you might be like, how is Poland doing this and how is Russia losing? Well, that is because the Ottoman Empire is the strongest country in the world. And yeah, when you're the 5th strongest country fighting the 1st strongest, you're not going to win, are you? Unless there's any external help. Now, pretty importantly, the Circle Alliance is tempted on joining this war, but they are like, we don't really want to escalate this. We're kind of here to stop Russia. But what this does, we're kind of here to stop the Ottomans. But what impact this does have is a lot more countries will be joining the Circle Pact, especially over here in Central Asia, where a lot of these border states will be joining this alliance. Meanwhile, over here, we see all of Italy will also join, and also this tiny Danzig country, which fears its life from Poland. But yeah, without help from any outside powers, Russia is cooked, as it does take maybe a year or two, but eventually Russia will slowly begin to collapse, as they are like not mass producing armies, like mass conscripting people. But the Ottoman Empire will just send in more troops. However, this does drain the Ottoman Empire quite a bit, as this is a very costly war for them to fight, but they are winning and doing very well. We see the Ottomans do go over to Finland and Brown Siberia, like, hey, join this war, but these countries are like, nah, we're staying neutral, bro, we're not joining this war. The pink team does go even further with their troops, but eventually they're like, stop, because what's the point? We see the Ottoman Empire offer quite a nice treaty over to Russia, making them not lose too much land. But Russia will not accept this, and thus the Ottoman Empire must continue fighting this brutal war up here, which they are slowly winning, and are nearing the Russian core land while they're already outside the capital. But the Russians fight really hard with this, but eventually their capital is encircled, and basically most of the Russian army is in here, which does allow basically the rest of Russia to go ahead and fall over to the Allied forces. And eventually, all of Russia's major cities are fallen, and the rest of this region does go ahead and surrender, leaving only the capital region escaped from Ottoman control. And eventually, the capital will go ahead and fall, and Russia is forced to go ahead and accept a very humiliating and very terrible peace treaty. But yeah, looking at this peace treaty, Russia is pretty damn humiliated. They could have accepted a much nicer peace treaty, but they chose not to. And over here, Poland has been restored and even given Estonia and Latvia up here and even some extra Russian land. While over here, the Ottomans took a huge chunk. They took basically all of Ukraine and all of the Caucasus. While over here, the pink team took all of this light blue country, I think it was, and a bunch of Russian land. And yeah, it's not looking too good for Russia, who has now been absolutely reduced and crushed. But it's also not looking too good for the Ottomans, who are now seen as definitely the aggressors of the world and everyone hates them. And also, look how much land they have. Nobody wants to be under, well, not nobody, but like most people don't want to be under Ottoman rule. And all this land they took has just made them even more unstable. We'll also see that the Square Alliance has been dissolved, and all these countries do actually go ahead and stay in the Star Alliance. But bad news for the Ottomans, because guess who's just joined the Circle Alliance? Ooh. Uh-oh. Oh, that's not very good. Yeah, it's looking like more and more countries are turning against the Ottoman Empire and their expansionist gains. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at this very big war which is about to erupt. We see that the Circle Alliance will officially declare war on the Ottoman Empire, and they will be like, we're here to liberate the people. As we see, West Africa is the first to make a move, and they will push their troops far and wide, managing to secure all of this region very effectively and quickly. And also gaining a bunch of support in Libya, hoping that they will go ahead and free them from Ottoman rule. We quickly see that Libya will just rise up in support, especially in this region that the Ottoman Empire basically never had control of. And yeah, the Ottoman Empire quickly lose the African front. We see the blue team launch an invasion into this region, doing pretty well, managing to secure their old capital. However, up here the Ottomans were actually preparing to launch an invasion into the blue team, and the blue team will absolutely be crushed over in this region, losing a lot of their northern land. While Persia and the Ottomans will launch a naval invasion into this region, managing to secure a foothold in modern-day UAE. But in Persia has bigger problems, as India is here, and they have completely folded Persia instantly. And Indian troops will begin moving in. The only problem with India is that they have a pretty weak front line. And because of this, they can't really help Central Asia. Unfortunately for Central Asia, they are surrounded by two big powers. And yeah, maybe they shouldn't have joined the Circle Pact. As we quickly see that the pink team will go ahead and secure a lot of these countries. And eventually, all of the small Central Asian countries will actually go ahead and fall over to the Ottomans, leaving only the gold team, Tibet, and this orange team. Now, Europe is interesting, because I don't actually think these countries actually managed to do too well. But we do see that Germany does actually go ahead and launch an invasion into this region, doing alright, but when they try and invade Poland, it doesn't actually go too well, as they don't really get that far. And I honestly think that the Ottoman Empire could win this war. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, they don't really have too strong and like neighbors. Like the only one they have is India, and they have a tiny front line with India. And the Ottoman Empire kind of knows this, as they will go ahead and ramp up their forces, launching a huge counter-offensive over here in West Africa, doing incredibly well, pushing them completely out their land. And they were even near the West African capital. And this is quickly revolted as West Africa, decides to, lock in and push back the Ottomans. But yeah, that counter-offensive has had huge morale boost all across the empire. As we see that Germany is pushed back over here like so. However, a big problem over in Ukraine, and that is the Crimean or Gold Ukraine rebels have broken out, and they have managed to secure basically all of Ukraine for themselves. They do not want to be under the Ottoman Empire. Now the Ottoman Empire has another front to worry about. Poland will manage to push back the Germans up here, leading to a pretty big stalemate. However, they will actually manage to wipe out this Danzig country for themselves, forcing Germany to invade in order to secure some land up here. While the Ottoman Empire will continue to push back Germany in this region, however, Italian troops arriving into Germany will create a pretty big front line, like stalemate. While over here, India will continue to push into the Ottomans. And also down here in Persia, they will continue to push into Persia. And this invasion will be kicked out. However, down here, the Ottoman Empire will continue to do pretty well against the blue team, as a lot of their troops are down here and they have been trained. And they have been specially trained to fight in this climate, which is a pretty big W for the Ottoman Empire. However, more and more countries will continue to join this war in order to see the collapse of the Ottomans, like the gold team over here, which will go ahead and push in, like so, managing to secure all this land. We'll also see down here that this Sudanese country will push in, also securing a bunch of land, and the Ottoman Empire has kind of decided to abandon this land, because, like, what's the point? We'll also see over in Libya that West Africa has kind of lost their foothold in here. It's actually, like, Libyan rebels, which are now kind of this colour. And the Ottomans continue to pour a lot of troops into West Africa, pushing them back quite nicely. However, over in Europe, more rebels will continue to rise up, as we see that the people of the Farmers Union do go ahead and rise up in this region, managing to secure themselves a pretty nice front line. Over here, however, Poland will actually push back Germany, and they will even begin their own invasion of Germany. And it's at this point where we see that a bunch of countries are no longer messing around, as a lot of Western Europe will go ahead and join this war, including Norway, the Netherlands, and Green France. We also see that down here, these two Iberian countries will also join this war. And yeah, Ottoman Empire, it's not looking too good for you now. The Ottoman Empire knows this, and they know that they have to kind of blitz through a bunch of countries in order to win. And they will absolutely go ahead and blitz through West Africa, actually managing to take their capital, which is a huge blow. However, West Africa knows that they will soon have help, and they refuse to go ahead and surrender. And eventually, help does arrive, and a huge Ottoman force is trapped over in the capital. And this is a huge blow for the Ottomans, if they have lost a bunch of their West African troops. And yeah, this just leads to the whole West African front collapsing for the Ottomans, as their main army has been crushed. And as West African and Iberian troops will absolutely bolt through Ottoman territory, managing to push all the way over to Egypt in like a month. While Western European support for Germany will allow them to push back, even pushing back Poland over here, they will manage to launch an invasion into Poland for like the second or third time, and they will near the Polish capital, however they won't manage to take it. Gold Ukrainian rebels will soon spread over here into the Caucasus, managing to secure a lot of these regions. However, over here, the pink team remains pretty unchallenged, as Tibet can't really move troops into this region because of their mountains. So they will go ahead and continue to use their troops to wipe out this gold team, in which they will do very well. However, we see down here that India will occupy the south of this country in order to make sure it doesn't completely lose. Meanwhile, India will continue their invasion into Ottoman territory, however it is going quite slow. And eventually, they will manage to re-liberate this Central Asian country, cutting off a lot of Ottoman troops. As we see that the pink team is forced to go ahead and control this land for themselves. Well, over here, all of Persia has fallen, and India continues its invasion into Persian land, which is now under the Ottoman Empire. Down here, however, the blue team does continue to lose, as we see that the Ottoman Empire continues their invasion into the Arabian Desert. However, they can't really get too far because, you know, they're in a desert. But we do see the Ottoman Empire does launch an invasion into this pink country, but eventually it stalemates down here. Well, over here, West African and Western European troops will continue to move in, now reaching the core regions of Egypt, which is a huge problem for West Africa. While we see that more and more rebels will end up taking place, rising up very violently up here. And we quickly see the Ottoman Empire make a huge blunder, and they lose all of this region over to the Germans. And one of the final nails in the coffin is the revolution of this country. And now you might be like, why the hell is everyone revolting? Well, that's because the Ottoman Empire kind of viewed down everyone as inferior. And when you have this many people hating you, it's like tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, and they all rise up, you're kind of cooked. And to make matters worse, India's invasion is showing no signs of stopping, and it is looking like the Ottoman Empire is very close to collapse. And it all goes to hell when the red team goes ahead and rebels. And this is the most economically prosperous part of the empire, and once they lose this, they lose their entire foothold in Arabia, as the blue team absolutely slams back into this region, and thousands, if not tens or even hundreds of thousands of Ottoman troops will quickly surrender as they are cut off. And yeah, it's just a matter of time before the Ottoman Empire goes ahead and collapses, as troops from the south move into this region, securing a lot of it. Well, over here, West Africa has managed to secure this region and is now moving into Palestine, taking over all of this land. Red Team rebels continue to rise up all across the Ottoman Empire, actually managing to secure this region, leaving this whole region over here to eventually fall over to Allied forces, which is a huge blow for the Ottomans. While Gold Team and other affiliated rebels will continue to go ahead and rise up in the Caucasus. And now the Ottomans are just left in Greece and Turkey. And now the Ottomans are just left in Turkey, as we see that Greece will go ahead and rise up. And it is over for the Ottomans. Allied troops, now under the colour of the Red Team, will go ahead and secure the Caucasus region. And it is only a matter of time, as we see that slowly troops will go ahead and take more and more of Ottoman territory. And eventually, we see that Western European troops will actually manage to be the first to reach Constantinople and take it. And eventually, after around a 7-year-long war, we see the Ottoman Empire will go ahead and surrender. And we can go ahead and look at this peace treaty, which, if you couldn't guess, will basically just be the resetting of the map. Poland over here will actually just get off scot-free, basically. And there we go, looking at this peace treaty, we can see the Ottoman Empire has been completely carved up. And basically, original borders have been returned. Now, over here, some of these borders aren't updated. I'd imagine that these countries over here have, you know, been kind of restored. And the Libyan problems are over, as Libya has been reunited. And the only real changes, other than a complete resetting, is that Arabia over here is basically fully united under the blue team. And their capital should be somewhere. Is it here? I'm going to assume it's like there, maybe. I don't really know. But Arabia is fully united. The gold team over here, they come back from Russia. Well, they don't return to Russia, but they come back as their own thing. And they also go ahead and own a lot of North Caucasus region. Now, Russia might have actually gained land in this peace treaty on accident, or maybe even lost land. But, whatever. I mean, as you see the Poland over here, gets off scot-free. They're chilling. And yeah, that is the end of the Ottoman Empire. They tried their best, but eventually they collapsed. And all they really did was make everything a lot less stable. They kind of basically buffed Poland, buffed the pink team, and buffed Arabia and gold team. And that was about it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. And I know some people don't like when it's just a huge reset at the end. The Ottoman Empire maybe could have won that war, but I think it would just be unrealistic to see them hold all that land and not face rebels. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.